Growing up, Lily and I were inseparable, or at least, that's what I used to believe. We were just 2 years apart, and as kids, we spent countless hours playing pretend businesses with our stuffed animals, dreaming of a future where we'd run something real together. Our parents always said we were like two sides of the same coin, Lily. The outgoing, charming one who could talk her way out of anything, and me, the practical, level-headed sister who made sure things actually got done. I used to think our differences made us stronger, that we balanced each other out perfectly. I was wrong. After college, we decided to go into business together. Lily had studied marketing and public relations, while I had majored in business management and finance. It seemed like the perfect fit. With a modest loan from our parents and some of our own savings, we launched our boutique skincare company. It started small, just an online store run from the guest bedroom in my apartment, but within a year, we had our first brick-and-mortar location. Lily's social skills and networking abilities brought in customers, and my knack for logistics and financial planning kept us profitable. I handled inventory, bookkeeping, and supplier negotiations, while Lily curated the brand's image, appearing on social media and charming influencers into collaborations. The first few years were grueling but rewarding. We worked around the clock, often staying up late packing orders and brainstorming ways to expand. Our hard work paid off, and soon we were opening our second store in a neighboring city. Lily thrived in the spotlight. She loved being the face of the brand, the one everyone associated with our success. I didn't mind staying in the background. I preferred the quiet satisfaction of seeing our revenue grow, of watching the numbers line up perfectly after a month of hard work. But as the business flourished, so did Lily's ego. She began treating our business less like a partnership and more like her personal empire. At meetings, she'd take credit for ideas I had worked tirelessly on. She started making executive decisions without consulting me, brushing off my concerns with a dismissive, "Relax, Sarah, I've got this." And our parents? They were completely taken with Lily's charm. "She's such a natural leader," my mom would gush at family dinners, while my dad beamed with pride whenever Lily showed off our latest ad campaign. It didn't matter that I was the one keeping the operations afloat. No one ever saw that part. At first, I told myself it didn't matter. We were both working toward the same goal, right? But over time, the resentment built up, like a slow-growing crack in an otherwise perfect facade. I noticed Lily becoming more secretive, brushing off my questions about financial decisions and expanding the business without my approval. I'd find out about new partnerships and promotional events through our social media pages rather than from her. When I confronted her, she'd laugh and wave it off. "Sarah, you worry too much. It's called initiative." Then came the little digs, the subtle reminders that she saw herself as the real brains behind the business. "You're great with numbers, but I'm the one with vision," she'd say with a smug smile. At first, I bit my tongue, not wanting to stir up unnecessary conflict, but the more I let it slide, the more she pushed. The final straw came when I overheard her talking to one of our employees at a company party. "Sarah, oh, she's great at spreadsheets and all, but let's be honest, I'm the reason we're successful." She laughed, completely unaware that I was standing just a few feet away. I should have said something right then and there, but instead I swallowed the lump in my throat and walked away, telling myself that one comment wasn't worth jeopardizing our company. But deep down, I knew this wasn't just one comment. This was who Lily was. The cracks in our relationship grew wider. I could feel the tension simmering beneath the surface, but I didn't know how to address it without making things worse. I told myself that as long as the business was thriving, everything else would work itself out. But the truth was, I was exhausted from constantly feeling like I had to prove my worth, exhausted from watching Lily bask in the glory while I did the heavy lifting in the shadows. Looking back, I should have known Lily was capable of more than just taking credit for my work. I should have seen the warning signs when she started asking more questions about how our shares were structured, how contracts worked, and how much authority she had. But I didn't. I thought she was just being more involved, taking an interest in the technical side of things. I never imagined she was preparing to betray me in the worst way possible. I remember the exact moment my world shifted. It was a Thursday afternoon, and I had just walked into our office, coffee in hand, ready to tackle the endless list of supplier meetings and inventory reports. But something felt off. The energy in the office was different, quieter, more tense. Our receptionist, Mia, avoided eye contact as she nervously shuffled papers around her desk. "Hey, Mia," I said slowly, my stomach twisting. "What's going on?" She hesitated, her eyes darting to the closed conference room door. Lily's in there with some people." I frowned. "What people?" Before she could answer, the conference room door swung open, and a group of well-dressed executives strode out, their expressions unreadable. Lily followed behind them, a tight, almost forced smile on her face. The moment she saw me, the smile slipped. "Sarah," she said, her tone too casual, "we need to talk." Something in her voice, something too smooth, too rehearsed, made my skin prickle. "What's going on?" I repeated, setting my coffee down with a sharp thud. She took a deep breath, brushing her blonde hair over her shoulder like it was just another day. "I sold the company shares." The words slammed into me, knocking the air from my lungs. "You... what?" She rolled her eyes as if I was being dramatic. "I sold our shares, Sarah. Well, technically, my shares. But since I had majority control, it's done." I blinked, unable to process what she was saying. "You can't just..." "Lily, we agreed to make these kinds of decisions together." Lily sighed, exasperation clear in her voice. "I did what was best for us. For me. You'd have held us back with your 'let's think this through' nonsense." She folded her arms. "Besides, the offer was too good to pass up. I took it. You'll thank me later." My hands were shaking, and I clenched them into fists. "You took all the profit, didn't you?" She didn't even flinch. "Yeah, and there's nothing you can do about it." Her words, so cold and final, sliced through me like a knife. My mind raced, trying to grasp the situation. How could she do this? After everything we built together? I forced myself to stay calm, even as the anger bubbled inside me. "Lily, this isn't just business. You betrayed me?" Lily shrugged. "Business is business, Sarah. Maybe next time you'll learn to be smarter." I could barely see straight as she turned and sauntered off, acting as if she hadn't just shattered everything we worked for. I stood frozen in place, my heart pounding in my ears. Mia approached hesitantly, placing a gentle hand on my shoulder. "I'm so sorry, Sarah," she whispered. I swallowed hard, fighting the burning behind my eyes. "It's not over," I murmured, more to myself than to her. "She thinks she won, but she doesn't know what I have." Because deep in the fine print of our business agreement, hidden away in a clause Lily had clearly overlooked, was my lifeline. I had insisted we include it during our early days, when I was still cautious, still thinking about what could go wrong. And now, that little clause might just save me. Lily thought she had the upper hand, but she underestimated me, and I was about to show her just how wrong she was. I sat in my office for what felt like hours after Lily's bombshell, staring at the contract I had dug out from our legal files. My hands trembled as I flipped through the pages, my eyes scanning the dense legal jargon that I had insisted we include when we first started the business. Back then, Lily had laughed it off, rolling her eyes at my paranoia, but I had stood firm, and now, here it was, my salvation. The clause was simple but powerful. Any sale of company shares required written disclosure to both partners, including full financial details, at least 30 days before finalization. If this condition wasn't met, the sale could be challenged and potentially nullified. I could already see Lily's smug face in my mind, so sure that she had outmaneuvered me, so sure that I would just roll over and accept my fate. Not this time. I took a deep breath, gathering the contract and my resolve before dialing my lawyer, Mark Henderson, a no-nonsense professional who had helped us draft the original agreements. When he picked up, his voice was brisk but warm. "Sarah, what's going on?" I wasted no time. "Lily sold our shares without telling me. She took all the profit." There was a brief pause before Mark sighed heavily. "I was afraid something like this might happen. Did she provide the required notification?" "No." I swallowed hard. "Nothing. I found out when I walked into the office this morning." Mark's tone sharpened. "Then we have a case?" Relief flooded me, but it was quickly followed by the gnawing anger that had been simmering since Lily's betrayal. "What do we do?" "First things first, we file an injunction to freeze any transfer of ownership until the courts review the terms of your agreement," Mark explained. "This will put everything on hold, which means the buyers can't proceed until we sort it out." I felt a sense of satisfaction settle in my chest. Do it! Over the next week, things escalated quickly. The injunction sent shockwaves through the office. The buyers who had thought they were walking into a done deal were now furious and demanding answers. Meanwhile, Lily had gone from smug to furious in the blink of an eye. She stormed into my office one afternoon, slamming the door so hard that the glass rattled. "You little snake," she spat, her eyes blazing. "I can't believe you pulled this stunt." I sat calmly, arms crossed, watching her unravel. "I didn't pull anything, Lily. You did. I'm just protecting what's rightfully mine." She let out a bitter laugh. "You think you're so smart, huh? Well, I'll fight you on this, Sarah. I'll drag you through court, and you'll regret ever messing with me." I met her glare head on. "You already messed with me, Lily, and I'm done letting you walk all over me," she sneered. "You've always been the boring one, the cautious one. That's why I had to do this. You would have let the business stagnate while I took us to new heights." I felt a sharp pang of hurt, but I refused to let it show. "No, Lily, you wanted the spotlight and you didn't care who you stepped on to get it." Her lips curled in disdain, but she said nothing more, storming out of my office with a final, "This isn't over." And she was right, it wasn't. As the legal battle kicked into full gear, I found myself balancing a delicate act, trying to keep the business afloat while simultaneously fighting for my rightful share. The employees were caught in the crossfire, whispering in hushed tones whenever Lily and I crossed paths. Some of them were clearly on her side, charmed by her charisma and promises of better things. Others, the ones who had seen my dedication behind the scenes, quietly offered their support. One afternoon, Mia, our receptionist, slipped into my office with a hesitant knock. "Sarah, I just wanted to say, I think what Lily did was wrong. You built this company, too." I smiled weakly, touched by her words. "Thanks, Mia. I appreciate it." But Lily wasn't giving up without a fight. She started a smear campaign against me. Subtly, at first snide remarks to employees about how I never really contributed much anyway. Insinuations that I was bitter and trying to hold the company back. And then, more public jabs. I woke up one morning to find an article in a local business magazine with a glowing feature on Lily and her brilliant business acumen, crediting her as the driving force behind our company's success. My name wasn't mentioned once. That was the moment I realized this wasn't just about the money for Lily, it was about the narrative. She wanted to be the hero, the visionary, while I was reduced to a footnote. But I wasn't going to let that happen. With Mark's help, I gathered every piece of evidence I could, emails, financial records, and communications proving my role in the company's growth. I met with the new buyers directly, explaining the breach of contract and how the sale wasn't valid. They weren't happy, but they respected the legalities and agreed to wait for the outcome. Meanwhile, I started to reclaim my narrative. I reached out to some of our industry connections and made sure people knew the truth that I was still very much a part of the company and that I wasn't going anywhere without a fight. Then came the turning point. Mark called me one evening with news that made my heart leap. Sarah, we have Lily backed into a corner. She didn't disclose financials properly, which means not only is the sale voidable, but she could be facing fraud charges if we push this. I almost dropped my phone. Fraud? Yes. If you're willing, we can take this to court and potentially sue for damages. I felt a wave of conflicting emotions. Part of me wanted to let it go, just to get my shares back and walk away from Lily forever, but another part, the part that was tired of being stepped on, wanted to see her face the full consequences of her actions. She always thought I wouldn't fight back, I murmured. Let's show her she was wrong. As the court date loomed, Lily grew more desperate. I started receiving late-night messages, first attempts at reconciliation, then outright threats. "You'll ruin us both," she texted one night. "No, Lily," I replied. "You did that all by yourself." The day of the hearing, I walked into the courtroom with my head held high. Lily, on the other hand, looked rattled. I sat across from her, and for the first time in a long time, I felt in control. I wasn't the naive sister she could manipulate anymore. And as our lawyers began presenting our case, I knew one thing for sure. This wasn't just a business dispute anymore. This was about standing up for myself, once and for all. The courtroom was buzzing with quiet murmurs as I sat at the plaintiff's table, my hands clasped tightly in my lap. I could feel the weight of every glance in the room, the anticipation thick in the air. Across from me, Lily sat stiffly, her usual confident smirk replaced with a nervous fidgeting of her pen. This was it, the culmination of months of legal battles, emotional exhaustion, and the burning desire to reclaim what was rightfully mine. The judge, an older woman with sharp eyes that missed nothing, entered the room, and the murmurs died instantly. As she settled into her seat, my lawyer, Mark, leaned over and whispered, "Stay calm, Sarah. We've got this." I nodded, swallowing the lump in my throat. Lily's lawyer, a sleek, polished man named Derek, stood first, launching into an elaborate defense that painted Lily as the victim of a misunderstanding. My client had every right to make executive decisions regarding her majority shares. She acted in the best interests of the company, he droned, his voice oozing condescension. I watched Lily from across the room. Her posture was rigid, her gaze locked ahead, refusing to look at me. She probably thought she could bluff her way through this like she always had, flashing that charming smile and spinning the narrative to her advantage. But this time, it wasn't going to work. Mark stood next, clearing his throat as he pulled out a thick binder filled with documents. "Your Honor, what we have here is not a simple misunderstanding, but a clear violation of contractual obligations." He flipped through the pages, placing several copies in front of the judge. Per the agreement signed by both parties, any sale of shares required full disclosure to both partners, including financial statements and a 30-day notice. The judge adjusted her glasses, reading through the pages, her expression impassive. I stole a glance at Lily, and for the first time, I saw the fear in her eyes. She knew what was coming. Mark continued, "Ms. Davis," he gestured toward me, "was provided no such disclosure. In fact, she only learned of the sale after it had been finalized. The transaction was carried out in secrecy, and as per clause 14.3 of their contract, this renders the sale null and void." Derek shifted uncomfortably in his seat, standing quickly. "Your Honor, my client acted in good faith. There was no intentional deception." Mark didn't miss a beat. "Good faith?" He turned, locking eyes with Lily. "We have email records showing that Ms. Davis repeatedly inquired about financial changes, to which Ms. Brooks," he gestured at Lily, "responded with misleading statements or ignored her entirely." Derek scrambled to object, but the judge held up a hand. "Ms. Brooks," she said, her voice cool and authoritative, "do you have an explanation for these discrepancies?" Lily finally looked at me, and for the briefest moment, I saw something behind her eyes. Regret? Shame? But then, as always, she straightened up, her voice coated in false confidence. I was trying to protect the company. Sarah was hesitant about big moves, and I didn't want her to hold us back." I clenched my fists under the table. There it was, the same condescension, the same dismissal of my role. The judge's gaze didn't waver. Ms. Davis had a legal right to be informed. You knowingly bypassed that right. That's not protection, Ms. Brooks. That's fraud. A murmur rippled through the room. Lily's face drained of color, and for the first time in my life, I saw her speechless. The judge turned to me. Ms. Davis, are you seeking damages in addition to the nullification of the sale? Mark stood. Yes, Your Honor. Due to the breach of contract, my client is entitled to compensation for lost potential earnings and emotional distress. Lily shot up from her seat, her composure cracking. This is ridiculous! She's just being petty! Her voice echoed through the silent courtroom, drawing an exasperated sigh from her lawyer. The judge's expression hardened. Sit down, Ms. Brooks. This is not a debate. I remained quiet, composed, but inside I was screaming with vindication. This was it, my moment. Lily had always been the louder one, the bolder one, the one who stole the spotlight. But now, the truth was out in the open, and no amount of charm could save her. After a brief deliberation, the judge returned with the ruling. The court finds in favor of the plaintiff. The sale of shares is hereby nullified, and Ms. Brooks is ordered to compensate Ms. Davis in the amount of $250,000 for damages. The gavel came down, and just like that, it was over. Lily sat frozen, her mouth slightly open in shock. I exhaled shakily, my chest tight with a mixture of relief and triumph. As we stood to leave, Lily finally turned to me, her face a mixture of disbelief and anger. You just couldn't let me win, could you? I met her gaze steadily. No, Lily. I just couldn't let you steal from me. She scoffed, shaking her head in disgust, and stormed out of the courtroom, leaving me standing there with Mark and the weight of victory settling over me. Outside, the crisp air hit my face, and for the first time in months, I felt like I could breathe again. Mark clapped me on the shoulder. You did it, Sarah. I nodded, a small smile breaking through. Yeah, I did. Lily may have thought she could rewrite the story to make herself the hero, but the truth had finally caught up to her. And now, I was free. In the days following the court ruling, the reality of my victory slowly settled in. At first, it felt surreal, like I was walking through a dream where, for once, everything went my way. But the truth was, it wasn't a dream. I had fought for what was mine, and I had won. Lily, on the other hand, disappeared from my life almost immediately after the verdict. No texts, no calls, not even a passive-aggressive social media post. She packed up her things from the office and vanished, leaving behind only the mess she had created. It should have felt satisfying, seeing her finally face the consequences of her actions, but in a way, it was bittersweet. We had built something incredible together, and now it was mine alone. I walked into the office on Monday morning to a round of cautious applause from the team. Some people looked relieved. Others, especially those who had been closer to Lily, avoided my gaze entirely. I wasn't sure what to expect moving forward, but I knew one thing for certain. I wasn't going to let what happened define me or this company. All right, I said, standing at the front of the office, my voice steady. We've been through a lot, but it's time to get back to business. Mia, our receptionist, smiled encouragingly. We're with you, Sarah. That small moment of support meant more to me than I could express. The following weeks were a blur of restructuring. I went through every department with a fine-tooth comb, making sure there were no lingering surprises left behind by Lily's reckless management. The more I dug, the more I realized just how much she had kept from me: unapproved marketing expenses, inflated travel budgets, and questionable deals made without my consent. Cleaning up the financial chaos she left behind was exhausting, but at the same time, it was empowering. One evening, after another long day of sorting through Lily's mess, I sat in my office staring at the framed photo of us from the early days of our business. We looked so happy, so hopeful. I traced the edges of the frame with my finger before sighing and tucking it away in a drawer. That chapter was over. It was time to move forward. My first major decision as the sole owner of the company was to bring in a new partner, someone I could trust, someone who shared my values. After careful consideration, I reached out to an old college friend, Claire, who had built a successful career in operations and logistics. Claire had always been meticulous and level-headed, qualities I knew the company needed. When I offered her a partnership, she accepted without hesitation. "Sarah, you're stronger than you think," she said over coffee one morning. "This company is going to thrive under your leadership." And she was right. As the weeks turned into months, our business began to stabilize. Sales picked up, new partnerships flourished, and for the first time in a long time, I felt in control, not just of the business, but of my own life. I heard through the grapevine that Lily was struggling. She had tried to start another business, but without my steady hand to balance her impulsiveness, things weren't going well. Part of me felt sorry for her, but I knew she had made her choices, just as I had made mine. One afternoon, while reviewing our quarterly reports, an unfamiliar number flashed across my phone screen. My stomach twisted when I saw the message. "I hope you're happy now." It was Lily. I stared at the screen for a long moment before locking my phone and setting it aside. I didn't need to respond. I was happy. I had proven to myself and to everyone else that I wasn't just the quiet one in the background. I was capable, strong, and determined. Looking out over my office, I realized something important. I didn't need Lily to succeed. I never had. And now, with the weight of her betrayal behind me, I was finally free to move forward on my own terms. A year later, I stood in the doorway of our newest boutique, watching customers browse through the shelves filled with products I had carefully curated. The company was thriving under my leadership, and with Claire's help, we had expanded beyond what I once thought possible. Life felt lighter now. I no longer woke up with a gnawing anxiety that Lily's next move would sabotage everything I'd worked for. Instead, I woke up excited, eager to build something truly my own. Occasionally, I'd hear about Lily struggling to keep her latest venture afloat, hopping from one failed project to another. I didn't revel in it, but it reminded me of how far I'd come. As I locked up the store that evening, I smiled to myself. This was my victory, not just in court, but in life. I had reclaimed my future, and it was brighter than I ever imagined.